Welcome, everybody, to another episode of VR Roundtable. We are now up to episode 127 of the show, and we do have a full complement of hosts this week. We've got Steve in the building, we've got Chris with a brand new haircut, and we have Gary in the building as well. What is going on, everybody? Okay, so today we don't have a ton of like major news stories and big games, but we do have some stuff to cover. We have some stuff to get into. Obviously, the big news this week was all about the Vive Cosmos. At least we thought that was kind of the big news. We'll get into that in a little bit. Also, we weren't here last week. We missed an episode last week, and so we want to double back and kind of look back on E3 2019 from a VR gaming perspective. We have a bit of some other news, like a major Oculus game finally got a date, finally got a price. We're going to talk about that as well. So why don't we go ahead and get it started? Actually, wait, before we get it started, why don't we check on the crew and see how everybody is doing? Steve, what is the latest? What's going on? Are you getting ready for your Valve Index soon to be arriving, right?
Yes, that is I guess the big news on the block is mine. I don't have my ship status yet. I am, according to FedEx, I am 1 day away from Illinois, where these are being shipped out of. So I don't expect my shipped information until probably mid to late next week. But yeah, it's Valve Index week. I should be getting it on Friday, or hopefully before, along with everybody else that's in this first wave. And I look forward to running it through its paces. For me, it's I don't know if I'll know in a matter of a couple days of time with it, but I'm definitely not going to keep the Index and the Pimax. So one of them's going. So I will be, hopefully I'll know and be able to, well, I mean, eventually I'll be able to say it on the show either way, but maybe I'll know immediately. Maybe it'll take me a week or so, but be interesting to know which one I'm going to keep. Either way, I'm excited for Knuckles, and I'm going to call them Knuckles. So that's all I got.
I would probably try to keep both of them for a good solid month, because sometimes like you might even jump to a conclusion right away and then, a week later, a couple weeks later, maybe switch a little bit. So I'd keep them around. I think people are too quick to like, yeah, immediately sell this off and, move on before they know for sure. Gary, speaking of that, we know that you've encountered a few little problems, a few little hiccups with a recent VR headset. We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but how's it going over there in the UK?
Yeah, it's pretty good over here. Yeah, so we didn't have a show last week. We were all a little bit busy, but yeah, I've not really played too much VR, but we've been sort of keeping up with the news and stuff like that that's been coming out of E3 and all of that stuff. Looking forward to getting into all of that.
Okay, and Chris is in the building as well. Chris, not getting a Valve Index, right? You're going to hold off on this one and kind of live vicariously through everybody else. I'm not getting one right away either. Anything else going on in your world, Chris?
Yeah, not much. A lot of quests lately. My Rift S is given to a friend, and my regular Rift I don't really want to use too much, so it's kind of been all quest. We'll talk about the Franken quest model a little bit later as well, but yeah, I was on vacation for the last week, so I had no internet, really no anything, so quest was great for that.
Awesome. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get into the first major story of this week, and it was absolutely all about the Vive Cosmos. At least that's kind of what we thought. Now, the week prior, we heard that there was going to be some kind of an info dump that was going to come out from HTC, and they were saying next week. And that was this week that we just had. And so Monday went by, no information. Tuesday went by. Wednesday, Thursday, we're like, what's going on? We're running out of week here. And then all of a sudden we heard on Thursday, there was a tweet where basically there would be some information that was going to come on Friday. And we did get some information. If you consider a video of a spinning HMD on a table information, and HTC is pulling out all the stops, man. They are spending just an unbelievable amount of money on production value, the trailers, the special effects, the hands that are moving extremely quickly, adjusting that headset on the fly as it spins around the table. Unfortunately, not a lot of other news that arrived with the Vive Cosmos. Now, of course, the big thing we did find out about, though, is the 6 cameras. So now we have 2 extra cameras for the inside out tracking, which that's good news, because we were wondering back in January when we first saw the Vive Cosmos at CES, we only saw those 4 cameras. The positions of the cameras were a little dubious in terms of how the tracking volume would work out. Then, of course, the Rift S comes down the pipe. We get that 5th camera on top, which maybe that put a little bit of pressure on HTC. And I don't, one of the questions we have is these 2 additional cameras, is this a last minute scramble? Is this something they've been planning for months? These are questions that we have. In addition to all of this, there were some rumors that hit on Friday. MRTV, Sebastian Ang of MRTV had apparently had an insider that gave him some information. Now, again, we got to take all of this with a gigantic grain of salt. In fact, MRTV said this himself. And one of the things he mentioned was he got a handful of information about the Vive Cosmos in advance. And part of that information was there were 6 cameras. Then it was revealed that there were 6 cameras. So MRTV assumed that all the other information he got was accurate as well. Now, we don't know if this is like fully legitimate. It could be false rumors, whatever, but we'll go ahead and report on it. Basically, at first, he was saying it was going to be $900 for the Vive Cosmos and that it would be shipping later in the month of August. Then MRTV later clarified and said, oh, actually 900 euros. It's going to be less than that. And HTC saw all of this and they commented on a Road to VR story, basically saying, no, it's not $900. It is lower. More information is coming next week. All the specs are coming next week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, Chris, why don't I jump over to you first? Now, I know that you're probably not in the market to buy another new headset right away, but you're definitely keeping your eyes on all of this. And the Vive Cosmos, certainly an interesting option because we might have this really high resolution and decent controllers, which Windows Mixed Reality, not exactly. What's your thoughts on all the rumors and just HTC's marketing in general?
Yeah, well, I mean, to comment on the marketing, I think it was a stupid move. I remember seeing the tweet. I was like, wow, that's it, huh? But also just the feeling that they kind of tacked on these 2 cameras like at the very end of their product design was also the thought I had, which doesn't give me too much confidence in the Cosmos. Like, I'm sure it's going to have probably really great displays and the controllers actually look pretty good. So, we'll have to wait and see how all that comes out. But yeah, this camera thing was just so stupid. I'm like, oh wow, they just put them there and that's it. They called it a day. I think the Rift S has really well thought out camera placement where they have the 2 looking down so they can really see down low and everything. These will probably be also good enough, but we'll have to wait and see on that more, I guess. So yeah, for me, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out on the Cosmos. It looks okay. Like it looks like one of the better things HTC's put out in a while. It better be like $500 or else I don't think I would even consider it though. I don't want to spend a lot of money on a headset that might not be that good. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And Gary, one of the things I forgot to mention that we did find out about this is the faceplate era has begun. Okay, so Valve started it off with the shield. You get this like shield that you can remove and something could be underneath there. And HTC is like, man, we don't want to be left out. Let's go back to those old days. Do you guys remember the early days of the Xbox 360? You would get an Xbox 360, you'd stand it up vertical style, and they sold these face plates. There were all these like the wood grain Atari face plate. So yeah, man, that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to have wood grain face plates, clear ones, silver ones, maybe ones that have like Arizona Sunshine logos all over it. I don't know what's going to go on here, Gary.
I don't know. I mean, first of all, just commenting very quickly on the video itself, it looks like it was a scramble. It looks like they wanted to do a lot more on Friday and reveal specs or something, and then they thought for whatever reason they couldn't do that, they couldn't meet that deadline, and they had to release something. So they just asked around the office, who's got an iPhone, we need to film something. And that's honestly what it looks like. It looks like I could have filmed it better. I mean, that's how bad it was. It doesn't look like a great promo video, first of all, and also the weird thing is, so next week we're going to be getting some full specs on this, hopefully, anyway, if they meet that target. But yeah, the video was really amateurish. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, so we're seeing these 6 cameras and the faceplate and that kind of stuff. I will say, I think it looks okay. Like Chris, I think it looks okay as a device, but we don't know the price of it and all the specs. And people are sort of assuming it could possibly be like a 2160 by 2160 device. Which would line up with what they've said, but I just don't believe that. I don't believe that they'd price a Cosmos lower than a Vive Pro and give it a higher resolution. And also the other thing on this faceplate issue is I don't see any actual connections for the cameras to make a connection inside. It looks very, very half-hearted what they're showing here. This was mentioned on Rendered Reality Coffee and VR. They were saying what are the connections? There's nothing there. It looks like very much like a mock-up of what they want to achieve. And how far away is this release date? We don't know on that either. But, they're not giving us enough to really even comment, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, since you brought up that issue with the faceplate, I noticed that as well, and I thought, wouldn't the faceplate pop off and it would have holes for where the cameras are? Like the cameras wouldn't be on the actual faceplate. How are we going to buy all these additional faceplates? They're not going to come with their own private cameras. So yeah, that did seem kind of weird, and it kind of makes you wonder if they are still kind of scrambling with this whole thing. And I don't know. Steve, why don't we go to you and let's talk about pricing, because you probably had an opinion of what you thought the price might be. Then we got these rumors from MRTV. And real quick, before we get to the MRTV rumors, one thing I will say, a lot of people are like, oh, he's just making it up. It's just a stunt, a publicity stunt. Yeah, I've got an insider, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I will say about this, I'm not saying this is real or fake, but Sebastian, one time, he told me sensitive information a day before the thing was announced, and he was 100% on the money. So he's had a source before. That's the only thing I'll say about that. But Steve, what's your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I'm usually the different opinion. And it looks like I'm going to be the lone dissenter here. A couple things. So I'm not sure when this Cosmos was originally unveiled, if you want to call it that, in January at CES. We are now coming into July. So it's been, what's that, 6.5 months, going on 7 months. And I'm not sure that qualifies as scrambling to add cameras. I think it was probably well known. I'm not convinced they've scrambled to add cameras. I think the camera addition's a good thing. I think they're positioned pretty well. I would even argue that perhaps the way that front one is pointing down is maybe better positioned. The Oculus ones sort of point to the side. Of course, we don't know the field of view of the cameras, but that one almost looks like it's dedicated to mitigating the inside-out tracking issue of when you're holding your controllers down at your waist, walking around in a game like Fallout or Skyrim or what have you. I think that is just looking at it as we see it in this video, I think that's not a bad placement. The one pointing up, likewise, on the Oculus, the Rift S, it's flat and it's pointing straight up, whereas this one at an angle looks like it would capture some of that arc volume that you're more likely to be swinging. I can't do it in this video, but you're not really up here, but you're up here. And I think that is also a decent position. As to the marketing of this video, yeah, it's a low rate video. To be fair to HTC, and I'm not a big fan of that company, but I will be fair, is they live streamed this, I believe. They have not posted this video on their YouTube account. They have not posted this video in terms of a like a promo trailer. They just live streamed this. So this was really HTC saying, we're not going to give you everything. We're just going to put the tip in. And I don't believe I just said that, but you know, and wow. Okay.
Roll with it.
Yeah. Sorry, I made me lose my own train of thought. But anyways, like, I think they plan to just kind of do this tease. And also, you know, I've been on the Pimax circle for a good 5-6 months now. I think I'm just kind of used to Chinese marketing. Like they just think differently. And this seems like it came out of the China office a little bit. So, I don't hate on everything, I'm seeing here. I think it's a step in the right direction since they unveiled the Cosmos at CES. On the price, now price, I think anytime we look at anything with HTC, we rationally think of what we think it should cost and then add about 25% minimum, maybe even 50%. So if this ends up being 2160 by 2160, then I think the price up and around 800 makes sense. Now we know that HTC has come out and said that Sebastian's claim was incorrect, but I mean it could be $10 less. Like yeah, it may come in under the 800. It might be 749 or 789. Like saying it's going to be less than that is really just damage control in my mind. So I think this is going to be expensive if it is 2160 by 2160. If it is closer to current res of Vive Pro, then maybe it'll come in at 699. Like I think they're going to charge more than the base Vive package. So that's where it'll be overpriced compared to what we think it should cost. Like that's a given.
Yeah, sorry, just quickly, because when I was talking on VR365 Discord yesterday to Shoebook, he's the one who first put this thought into my head about the fact that how could they do it as 2160 by 2160 when they are offering a Vive Pro at 1600p, which is presumably going to be more expensive than this. It seems like a weird strategy for them to do that. And I wonder if, like, when they said this is the highest resolution display, it just matches the Vive Pro. They could equally say, you know, it's just the highest resolution display that we do, which is 1600p. It matches the Vive Pro, and this is a consumer model. This is more aimed at the consumer market of that. But then I was thinking, you know, like the Oculus Quest is a high resolution technically than the Rift S. I mean, I know they're using different displays and it's pentile versus RGB stripe, but the Oculus are doing that a similar kind of thing. And this is a later product. The Cosmos is a later product, and people have come to expect perhaps 2160 at this point. Who knows?
Yeah, you know, Chris, one thing I'll say about all of this is like if we go all the way back to the January CES when they first unveiled the Vive Cosmos, and it wasn't the greatest unveiling back then either. I mean, we pretty much got almost no information. But Dan O'Brien, I believe, I thought he was kind of explaining that the Vive Cosmos is designed to be simple, to be easy. Like the idea behind the Vive Cosmos is we want to make VR easier for everybody. And so we're doing the inside out tracking, so you don't got to worry about that. You're also going to be able to tether it to a phone at some point. And it seemed like they were kind of positioning this to be a bit more of a mass market device and more of like maybe somebody's first PC VR headset and all these kinds of things. But you think about all of that and it would suggest that the price would be much more mass market. The regular Vive, the standard Vive, like if you get a regular normal Vive right now, it's $499, $500. And so how does this fit in if it is going to be $800? Like how does that correlate with what they were saying in January?
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense when you think about it that way, because I think they really need to I just really need I don't know what I'm saying. You got I haven't worked on this podcast in 2 weeks. It's like where am I? How do I do a podcast? I forgot how. No, but seriously, yeah, this device, I don't think it fits at all because they need to lower the price of the Vive to be like, $399 at least, maybe $299, and that one is suddenly more mass market because of the price difference. But then you think about the Vive Cosmos, it has next gen controllers, which I think is a big deal. It has this tracking system, which hopefully is going to be equally as good as the Rift S, which means at that point, it doesn't really matter if you're doing Lighthouse or Inside Out. I think they're kind of equal in that way as well. So I feel like this is more of a next gen device, is what it feels like. But then when HTC says that they're making it more simple and mass market, that kind of makes it sound like it should be less than the Vive. So it's a whole big mess, but I think it actually is probably going to end up replacing the Vive like the Rift S replaced the Rift, probably when it comes out. I mean, it's been a long time coming. They really need to up their game on the controllers, the displays, everything. So I'm hoping it's going to be a full replacement. Maybe even, there'll be like a Vive Cosmos Pro for the Enterprise, and then that one's way more expensive. I think they just need to redo their whole lineup at this point, personally.
I think it should be cheaper. Now, other HTC sells it for less, but it should be cheaper for them to deal with because they're not buying crap from Valve. They're not buying the base stations, which is an expensive cost to HTC before they then sell it to us, the consumer. They're not buying Valve's technology from the touchpad and everything. That's basically the Steam controller aspect of the Vive ones. So by reducing all their costs there, it is possible that this comes out at somewhere around the base HTC Vive price, and I think it gives more out of the box. The integrated DAS, and we didn't really talk about that, but if you look closely at that video, you can see the audio cable is not embedded within the head strap. And I think that, like, while it doesn't look as sleek, I think that's a good thing because to me that seems like it's a step towards robustness. We all know what Oculus has dealt with, and with the CV1 and the ribbon cable failure, and that seems to have maybe motivated Oculus to go away from doing built-in headphones, whereas HTC went the other way, and it looks a lot like the DAS in terms of the headphones and everything. And I think that's a good thing. I think the Deluxe Audio Strap is that I'm using it on my Pimax. I think it's a good product. So I'm actually like. I think, a year ago, I was probably the biggest HTC hater on the show. And now with what I'm seeing out of the Cosmos, like, I actually think it could be a good product. What really will set its paces is three things in my mind: resolution, what do they do there, cost, and then does it have any standalone capability in terms of using a phone? There was a wild rumor that this was based off of that Acer prototype that was at CES, and if it is, then I think this could be a good product. Could be. Now, really, HTC's got to support it, and they can't, you can't sweat in it playing Beat Saber and then have your warranty rejected and all that crap. They got to do better in that space. So I'm not going to become an HTC defender, but if these things, if the Cosmos is 2160 by 2160 and it's $100 or even $150, $200 more than the HP Reverb, is that a bad deal? Because you're going to get the same resolution, you're going to get an IPD slider, and you're getting better tracking with 6 cameras, and you're getting better controllers. Is that worth $200 more than the HP Reverb? I say hell yeah.
Gary, real quick, actually, I wanted to thank Super Chatter, VR Ninja, with a super chat earlier today. Definitely appreciate that. Thanks so much. Gary, one thing I wanted to ask you is, like, what about the timing of all of this? So let's say MRTV's Insider is legit and we're looking at a late August arrival for this thing. It's after the Valve Index. Like, Valve Index has been available. People have been ordering Valve Index. Rift S has been available for a long time now. Reverb is out there. Why would they do this so late? Is it just a case where they simply they just weren't going to be ready until now? Maybe these cameras, like, were a little hiccup in the thing where maybe they kind of, like, I'm not saying they added these cameras like 2 weeks ago, but maybe they added them like 4 months ago, and maybe that delayed everything.
Yeah, I mean, timing wise, it seems basically when I look at this, okay, I'm looking at the market that we have at the moment. So we've got the HP Reverb that could potentially be giving us equal or better than resolution to this device. And then we've got the Valve Index, which is giving us probably not quite the resolution this might be, but it's giving us other things. It's giving us a high refresh rate screen and the wider field of view and that kind of stuff. What I want to see from this device and what I want to see next week when they give us some kind of specs is some kind of differentiating factor in the specs, because all I'm seeing is things that I've seen before in other headsets. And this, at the moment, other than like the 6 cameras, so it's got 6 cameras, I don't see it really differentiating itself enough from what we're already seeing out there. And that to me is a little bit of a problem for them to market this, especially if they're going for a slightly higher price than we would like. And a lot of people will say that the HTC, they can't afford to subsidize these devices in the same way that Facebook and Oculus can. And I don't doubt that Facebook and Oculus are significantly subsidizing the Quest and the Rift S, well, primarily the Quest, I would say. And HTC probably aren't in a position to do that. And that's a big issue. But we don't know their financials. We know they're struggling as a company overall, but we still don't know that they're not able to push this out there at a slightly lower cost. The thing is, if that is the case and they can't subsidize this headset at all, and we know that Facebook and Oculus are, then what can they do? How can they ever succeed in a market where they are competing with Oculus? Really, what can they do? I don't see a way out for them. They're promoting this more as a consumer headset, but really, unless they're differentiating it in other ways, what can they do to compete with Oculus? That's the problem.
Well, I think they can compete with Oculus by having a higher end. It does boil down. Are they trying to aim this at the consumer that's interested in a Rift S? Or are they aiming this at a consumer that's interested in the Index or the Reverb or the Acer Concept Transformer OHO D tablet thing? Like if they're, it depends on who they're aiming for. And I will say that while I don't have a lot of confidence that it's going to be successful, they have released Viveport and their own software store that could, in theory, if it was successful, could give them a revenue stream that would put them in better position to sell the hardware. Maybe not yet at a loss, but maybe not at a point where they got to make all of their profit from hardware and hardware alone. And I have seen no metrics. I have no clue how successful or unsuccessful Viveport is at this point in time right now. I feel like most people don't use it and avoid it like the plague. So if I had to guess, I would say it's not successful. But in theory, that could poise the company to make like one last push. You know, the CEO and all the C-suite executives are sitting at a table and they're saying, all right, we got Viveport. Let's do what we can to get this headset into as many homes as we can and just hope that the software sales and the Viveport Infinity subscriptions carry us through that financial gap. They could be rolling that dice. Again, I have no clue, no reason to indicate that they are, but that is a potential possibility to how they would stack up against Oculus strategically.
Yeah, I bet they'll bundle a few months of, Viveport Infinity with this headset. And I'm imagining once you have something like that, you're like, man, I have all these games. I don't know how much it is. I think it's like 500 plus titles or something. I feel like a lot of people would be like, man, it's built in. Like I plugged it in and it installed Viveport. I have it. It's only like, I don't remember the price, like I think $10 a month or something like that. I might just keep paying for it at that point. So that could be one last push, like you said, Steve. Like maybe that's their bet with this. I hope it is. I hope they don't just make this thing so overpriced that no one buys it and then they're screwed in software and hardware. So.
One quick comment on the Viveport angle is like, yeah, we're wondering, is Viveport a successful thing? Is it really doing anything for them? The one thing I'll say is like, you hear about certain games that are on Viveport, and sometimes the games I hear about that are on Viveport, I'm like, oh, wow, that game's on, like that company decided to sign up to put their game on Viveport. So there must be something going on there, because there are some big, well-known things that end up on Viveport, and it wouldn't just happen by accident. So it must have some modicum of success. The other thing, Gary was talking about a differentiating factor here. Like, what is their differentiating factor? And isn't it all about the hybrid thing? It's all about the phone thing, right? Because now what I'm not sure about with this phone thing is an idea where if you have a phone that has like a Snapdragon 855 and it's got the USB-C on it, and you could plug it into this headset. My question is, could the headset be powered off of the phone's battery as well? And if it could, how, like, would it last like 20 minutes? I mean, what would that be like? Because if this thing could somehow have battery juice, and you could use your Snapdragon 855 phone, and you could just have that phone like in your pocket or on your belt or something like that, you could essentially have a standalone HMD.
Well, I think it's the theory. It's what I think they're going for. And I think a battery in a phone, it can last a while. I would have to look. I don't know what the milliamp hour rating of the Quest battery is and compare it against the latest iPhone and the latest, greatest Android offering. So you can do that comparison. If you just get the milliamp hours, you can just roughly, extrapolate the time the battery will last.
But to power both the phone and the headset simultaneously?
Well, they can dim the phone screen when you're in VR or something. You could, because it's just a processor at that point. If you turn the phone display off, it's essentially no different than the Quest. The benefit the Quest has will be in its cooling capabilities, because it's got more space than a phone. So it's got the active cooling and the heat pipe and all that. The lower temperatures will make a battery last longer. But other than that, so yeah, I wouldn't expect it to compete directly with the Quest. But if you get, Quest can do 2.5-ish hours probably most of the time. If you get half that, if you could have a Cosmos that could do PC VR and do standalone, plug into your phone. It's a little more clunky, but it could do both with one device. And instead, you only got an hour and a half of possible runtime. It's not so bad. Like, it's not as good as a dedicated device, but it's a good middle ground, so that you can cover both sides. And it's actually cheaper to most people.
Yeah, I don't see how this is gonna work, just based on the standpoint that all phones with USB-C right now, they might not even have USB 3 on them. Like, I think my phone still, it has a USB-C port, but it's really just USB 2. It has almost no bandwidth if I plug it into my computer. So, I mean, phones are going to need to have Thunderbolt 3 at least, so they can run the displays and run, power through them and stuff. I don't think phones usually have that. So it'll probably have to be some sort of new device or new phone. And at that point, I don't know how many people are going to want to get this specific phone that has Thunderbolt 3 just for the Cosmos. So then, maybe HTC is trying to play it up if they release a phone that can do that or something, their own phone. But I just don't see it being as mass market as we would want it to be. I think your VR kind of thing is easy because it, runs off the screen of the phone and, all of it's built in. But this sounds really impossible to do with current hardware to me.
Yeah, I think my assumption would be that it's primarily marketed as a PC VR headset. And it's if you buy this because you want PC VR, but if you happen to have the correct phone, and maybe year one, not many people have, maybe it requires the 855 and up or whatever. Not a lot of people are going to have that year one, but a year and a half from now, more people will have an 855 based phone. So I think, it will lean PC VR, but have this capability, as opposed to being primarily a standalone device that, oh, by the way, can plug into a PC. It can lean one way or the other.
Okay, well, you know what? That pretty much covers it for Vive Cosmos. We kind of beat that one to death a little bit. We'll obviously get the real information next week, so we'll have to wait on that. But last week, we did not have an episode, and we did have E3 that came and left. And I don't know. I mean, overall, I would have to say, I wasn't expecting a lot from E3, to be completely honest about it. But as we got closer and closer to E3, it seemed like there was a lot of extra hype that was starting to kind of build up. And I was like, well, I'm not really expecting much, but maybe there is going to be a lot of stuff going on here. And so I started to get my excitement level up. Of course, that one day we had the Upload VR E3 explosion, basically, where a bunch of information came out. We got some new game announcements, some new trailers for stuff. And that did seem pretty good. And just that day, it was like, okay, this is looking pretty good. And then I personally was thinking, okay, well, this is just the beginning. Like, we're going to get additional announcements tomorrow, and there's going to be other stuff. But there really wasn't anything else. It was basically just what we got pretty much with the Upload VR thing. So overall, it's kind of looking like E3 2019 a bit disappointing. Now, what were some of the big things we found out about? We found out about Pistol Whip by Cloudhead Games, developers of Call of the Starseed, Heart of the Emberstone. So they've got a new game, kind of looks like a combination of Super Hot and Beat Saber, kind of a marriage of those two concepts. Budget cuts too. We got that announcement, and it does appear that Fast Travel Games, developers of Apex Construct, are going to be doing some heavy lifting here with budget cuts too. They might be more of the primary developer here with Neat Corporation in more of a producer role, and budget cuts too coming later this year. After the Fall by Vertigo Games might be the single biggest individual new game that we saw. I can tell you that for the longest time, I've been wondering, when are we going to get big sequels to all of VR's earliest, biggest games? And you look at a game like Arizona Sunshine, where is Arizona Sunshine 2? Well, After the Fall might actually be Arizona Sunshine 2 from a standpoint where they're sitting around a boardroom and they're like, what are we going to do for Arizona Sunshine 2? And somebody's like, I know. Let's put it in the snow zombies, and we'll kind of make it like Arctica 1. And so that's kind of what that looks like. So we did get some different announcements, like Solaris Off-World Combat is coming from First Contact Entertainment, but all we really got was a logo, basically, no video or anything like that. But why don't we go ahead and go around the roundtable real quick and get people's reactions to this E3 stuff that we did get and the stuff that we didn't get. Chris, were you watching this stuff very closely? Were you excited for E3? And coming out of it, what's your conclusion?
Yeah, I was super excited for E3. I was excited for the flat stuff as well. I know there was some cool announcements on that side of things as well. But I like you, I thought this was the beginning. I was like, okay, we're starting to ramp up here for the cool announcements, and there are some pretty decent announcements. I was excited about Pistol Whipped. I was excited about budget cuts too. Definitely. I think that one could be really cool if it came to more platforms and things like that. But then that was it. And I was like, oh, I guess that's all there is. So that sucked for me, because I was expecting there to be maybe even just dates announced for some more titles. And I know we have the date for Defector now. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but like, I thought there'd be dates for Defector and for Stormland. Like, where is Stormland? It's so good. All these games need to come out on the Oculus side of things for sure. Like, they're on the Rift S box. Everyone wants them. They show them off at all these demo things. I showed them off at E3 in their demos booth, but there's no announcements on when they're actually coming out. So that's like the really sad thing for me, because these games are great. I even tried some of them before, like a month or so ago, and yet they're not out yet. So it was overall kind of a big disappointment, but that's okay. We got at least something, so that's better than nothing.
Gary, when we look at like the VR landscape and we look at big AAA publishers that are out there, you got people like Ubisoft, you got people like Bethesda. They've done VR games in the past. Ubisoft kind of embraced VR kind of early. We got stuff like Eagle Flight, Star Trek Bridge Crew. They worked with SpectreVision on Transference. They've done some stuff in VR. Bethesda as well. Doom VFR. They did Fallout 4 VFR. Obviously, the Wolfenstein game that's going to be coming up soon. But both of these companies, huge publishers, had big, giant showcases for E3. And other than stuff that was already previously in development, nothing. Like, I don't think, did Ubisoft have any does this concern you a little bit?
honestly, see, going in before E3, I didn't expect a lot anyway. I don't think most people did, and I was looking forward to the upload thing. And I think that, credit where it's due. I think Upload did a pretty good job on what they did with that, and they showcased a lot of stuff. But that was pretty much it. I suppose. I mean, if there was one little disappointment when I had very little expectation overall, it would have been Bethesda, because Bethesda have been known for doing some kind of VR year on year at E3, and there was hardly anything. I think they what's that Wolfenstein game? They've got a Wolfenstein game that's coming out in VR in a few months, but that really doesn't excite me anyway. So I think we're going to have to wait for Bethesda to hear about their more substantial titles, and I think the big test will be in you're looking 2-3 years down the line when they release Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield, whether they provide any kind of VR support for those titles, to see their real commitment to VR. Because what they've done with Fallout and what they did with Skyrim, as much as I love those games, they were very half-hearted. I think I think it just looks like, I love those games, but they were half-hearted. They didn't really make it the way that we all wanted it to be in VR and that kind of stuff. So really, I suppose, like, the disappointment for me was Bethesda. Other than that, I wasn't expecting anything, and I think the Upload showcase was pretty good overall.
Yeah. Steve, what about you? I mean, was there, like, I know we're pretty negative here, but there is a bright spot. Like, we found out about a game like eSpire 1. We knew about this game eSpire 1, but everybody was ranting and raving about it that got their hands on it. Any thoughts about some of the good things we got out of this, and then just your overall opinions as well?
Well, I don't have too many thoughts on eSpire 1. I'm not really a big fan of stealth sort of oriented games. Got over it with Metal Gear 4, I think is when I kind of got over it. But I say as a whole, E3, like, look, everyone in chat and listening on the audio podcast in one form or other have probably heard me complain about content and the lack thereof. And E3 just sort of keeps pushing at that same narrative. I really want content to be there, and I don't think the financial investment is. So what we're seeing now is what I'm hoping is the reaction. Everything is on a little bit of a delay in terms of developers. We 2 years ago, VR didn't become the big, explosive, new, definitive way to play games and stuff like a lot of people were predicting. So I'm hoping what we see now in terms of games being ready to be released and shown is that lull kind of taking place, and maybe it'll steer the corner and uptick. I would say one of the things I'd hoped to have seen at E3 would have been maybe Borderlands 2 VR for PC VR officially announced. I would love to have seen, of course, Resident Evil 7 coming to PC. Like, I think there's content on the table that could have been announced, could have given it, much like how Skyrim was being announced on PlayStation VR. Was that 2017 E3? Like, that was a big deal. Like, that all kind of juiced us up a little bit and gave us energy. And it was port number 57 of a 8-year-old game or whatever it was back then. So, I would love to have seen that kind of continued investment, even if it was just ports. In terms of the new games, the one thing I'm most excited about that was shown was probably Pistol Whip. Now, everyone's saying it's like Beat Saber crossed with Super Hot, and that's a very valid description. But for me, it reminds me more of a game that I was really high on in 2017, and that was Dimension Hunter. Like, Dimension Hunter was musical, and at least in the first level of Dimension Hunter, you're shooting. And Pistol Whip looks like it takes Dimension Hunter more down a musical path, and it looks, of course, really well done. The team over there at Cloudhead know what they're doing and have been making VR games for a while. And it's nice to see them do something outside of the gallery, which we know they're working on the gallery episode 3, and that's going to be a really good game, and that's going to release whenever they're ready to release it. But them being able to do a side project, sort of, this Pistol Whip feels a little bit smaller than a gallery game. Maybe it's going to be $20 would be my guess based on what we've seen, but it looks like it's a real fun title. So of everything shown at E3, this was probably my winner if I had to give a winner of E3. But overall, VR at E3 is a big thumbs down because there's just not a lot. There's no meat there.
Yeah, regarding Pistol Whipped, one of the things that I noticed about it, and I think this is going to be a trend going forward, is I think a lot of developers are going to start making games that are going to be Quest friendly in the art aesthetic. Like the design is going to be Quest friendly so that they can swing it on to Quest. And I think Pistol Whip is a perfect example of this. I think it's pretty much guaranteed to come to Quest. But anyway, why don't we get on to some of the other news that we found out about recently in terms of game announcements and dates. Some of this stuff wasn't at E3, but then we found out some more information a little bit later. So let's go ahead and move on to that. And the first thing that we want to get into is Defector. We've been waiting forever for this. Chris was just talking about it. When are we going to get the release dates for all of these big games? Asgard's Wrath, Stormland, Defector, all these games that are coming. We've heard about them for the longest time. Well, now we do have an actual date. Defector is coming on July 11th, which is not very far away at all. It's only a couple of weeks away, really, and we're going to get that. Now, maybe the most shocking part of this entire thing is the price, $20. What's going on here? I've debated about this price myself personally, and I've heard different opinions on this. So I've heard some people say the price is designed to like make it open for VR. You know, let's get these prices lower and get more people buying VR. Other people believe, oh, it's $20 because it's very short. It's not a huge big experience. It's going to be a couple of hours. But then we hear on, I think the developers Discord, Twisted Pixel, I believe they said 4 to 5 hours for single player campaign. So it's kind of weird. Gary, when you saw this $20 price, were you excited? You're going to save a little bit of money. It's going to more money in your pocket. Or are you like, oh no, what's the other shoe that's going to drop here? Something weird's going on.
Yeah, it does seem, I've got to say that the first reaction is, okay, so this is pretty much just a smaller game than we were expecting. But this goes back to like the subsidizing thing that we were mentioning earlier, maybe because this is sort of, I'm just looking at the trailer. So this is by Twisted Pixel, but it's also in collaboration with Oculus Studios. So that means that they possibly were given some kind of subsidy in order to create this game and give us a pretty good experience. If it's 4 to 5 hours, I'm more than happy with that. And at the same time, like looking at this from the outside, so taking all that to one side, I'm okay with some of these smaller titles, if I'm being perfectly truthful about it. I don't mind having some of these self-contained smaller games that would be, say, 3, 4, 5 hours long, because I know I can get through them then. And while also having these bigger games like Skyrim or hopefully No Man's Sky and these kinds of things that just roll along in the background, I like things like Blood and Truth, which was around 5 hours long, 5, 6 hours long. So if this can even match that, then that would be great. For the price, I would be surprised if it's that long, though. So if this was 2 hours long or something like that, maybe I would be a little bit disappointed. I'd like something a little bit more substantial. But overall, what I'm seeing here, and if what they're reporting is it's 5, 6 hours long, then that's more than good enough for me. I think, I'm still looking forward to it. And the price, I suppose that is only a bonus for me.
Yeah. Does anybody, Steve or Chris, you got any comments on this? Any thoughts that this may be like a troubled development? Because Defector, like I think originally we had heard Defector was coming at the end of 2018. That didn't happen. It obviously got delayed. Although we didn't really get official information, but it kind of seemed like it was coming late 2018. That didn't happen. I don't know. I mean, could this be like a troubled project where it just didn't quite come together? And then Oculus is just like, the hell with this. Let's just release this thing. We'll price it at $20. We'll trim it a little bit. And, or is Oculus truly trying to like like lower the price and be a little altruistic with it and kind of like be generous, but they don't seem to be doing that with like Sport Scramble at $30 or Journey of the Gods at $30 on Rift and these kinds of things.
I see this as more bad news than good news. I do not believe Oculus has suddenly, with Twisted Pickle and Defector, suddenly become altruistic. Like, when you look at, they couldn't become altruistic and put headphones on the damn Rift S. Like, there would have been a spot to be altruistic, but no, I think this indicates that the game isn't going to, match Stormland or Asgard's Wrath. Like, we kind of had Defector, at least I did. I don't want to speak for all of you all and everyone, but in my mind, I kind of had Stormland, Asgard's Wrath, and I always felt Defector was going to be a little bit smaller than those two, but not much. And now I'm thinking it's going to be priced at bare minimum half of what those two games are going to go at. I don't see Stormland going any less than $39.99. The same thing with Asgard's Wrath. In fact, if I had to bet, I'd say they'd be more expensive than $39.99. But this game coming in at $19.99 suggests to me that it is a smaller, bite-sized game. That's okay. Like to Gary's point, sometimes a game that you can consume and move on isn't a bad thing. But when you're looking for content in general, more of what when the whole industry as a whole is looking for more meaty content, and this is one of the games that was pegged as sort of in the meaty category, and we find out that it's not, it just concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, it was like the big three games always when we heard the announcement of these three titles, it was always, Stormland, Asgard's Wrath, and this title. It's on the back of every Rift S box. Like, Oculus advertises the hell out of these games. So my guess is they, were expecting it to maybe be like a 10-hour game, and it was going great. Let's advertise the hell out of this thing. Let's throw money at this thing. And then maybe it just ran into some problems or is taking longer than they thought. And I think they need something to come out at this point. This is probably the one game that they could rush. You can't really rush something like Stormland because people already want it to be huge. Same with Asgard's Wrath, but we didn't know really much about Defector, probably, just because of all these problems. So yeah, it's really not a bad thing, but it's kind of a bad thing in the fact that I always thought this would be like a 10-hour plus experience that would be huge. Just, hearing the announcement and the hype around it. So I'm still excited for it, but maybe less excited than I was like when it was announced. So.
Does anybody know if this could like potentially come out like on the Quest or something like that? Could that be some kind of reasoning as the pricing as well? Like, they want to release this at $20 on both the Rift S and the Quest. I assume it's not been confirmed for the Quest anyway, or even if it could run on that. But could it be a way of them trying to sort of match prices? Because we're not expecting like $40 titles or something like that on the Quest. So there might be something.
Well,
yeah, but Anthony,
$30.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Sports Scramble, $30.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Sports Scramble.
Curveball's your whole idea there, Gary. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
One good thing though, like one takeaway that we can have is I remember when I saw the price for Transference. I think it was when I first saw the price for Transference. I think it was like $24.99 or something like that. And when I saw that price, I was like, oh no, I was really deflated because I was like, man, I thought Transference was going to be this incredible experience. If it's only $25, it can't be, right? And I still think Transference is a damn good game, and it lasted like 5 or 6 hours, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So, or 4 to 5 hours.
I got done with Transference in less than 3. It was closer to the 2-hour mark, and it's good. Like, that's a very good Transference. I think is a good example here because Transference is a high quality, meaty title. It's just really short. Whereas Defector could do the same thing. When the developer said, they came in the Discord and said, 4 hours, 5 hours? To me, that means most people are going to do it in 3. Like no one ever really, other than Anthony, takes as long as the developers say to complete a game. So if they say 4, expect closer to 3. And that's fine. 3 good hours for $20 is a fair deal. I'm not talking about, I'm not saying that's bad. all I'm saying is I had hoped more. I would rather a $40 game and give us 6 to 8 hours of high quality content, because I think VR just needs bigger titles in general. So that's my downer here as it relates to Defector. Like, I think it's going to be a great game. I'm sure if it's even anywhere near the same tone and feel as Blood and Truth, which I'm getting those same vibes, I think it's going to be great. I just want it to be bigger.
You know, maybe they got spooked by Blood and Truth. Blood and Truth was so good, and it's such a similar kind of a thing that they thought, oh, Blood and Truth is $40. We're not as good as that. We got to price it lower. I mean, probably not, but well, why don't we go ahead and move on to some other announcements that we heard about? Okay, so coming into E3 2019, we knew that Oculus was actually going to be at E3, and they were demoing games there. I think people were able to try like Lone Echo 2, some demos of that, demos of Stormland, and some other stuff. And we were hoping maybe Respawn Entertainment, you know, whatever happened to that? Where's this big Respawn game? Titanfall VR, Apex Legends VR, I mean, whatever it's going to be. We didn't get that at E3 2019, but we have since come to an understanding that it is going to be at Oculus Connect 6. And we also have the dates for Oculus Connect 6. It is September 25th and September 26th in San Jose, California. I'm hoping to go myself. Oculus, hook me up, send me an email. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd like to go. So anyways, does anybody want to comment on Respawn? Well, you know, the one thing Oculus did say about the game is they said it's a AAA first-person combat shooter or something like that. So when they put that word combat in there, I have a feeling this is like a multiplayer kind of a game. So kind of like a Titanfall, and it could be like a Titanfall kind of a game, or it could be like an Apex Legend type of a game. What does anybody think about this? Are you guys like super hyped? Any thoughts on Oculus Connect 6 or any of these things?
I don't have many. Go ahead, Gary. You go.
No, I mean, very briefly, it wouldn't surprise me if it is just a multiplayer game. That's the first thing I want to say. It wouldn't surprise me, but I would be a little bit disappointed. But yeah, OC6 with these dates, you know, I love it how they spread all these things out throughout the year, because we've got something else to look forward to anyway. But yeah, to do with the Respawn game, I would love a good, substantial single player game, as much as, you know, like a. You know, even if it's like a Defector, like a 4 or 5 hour game, something like that, and then they've got a multiplayer component, that would do me fine.
Any other thoughts?
I think it's definitely going to be multiplayer game, which is kind of scary. Like when you think about, like, if I was Respawn and I was developing primarily a multiplayer game, and you look at you look at Space Junkies, you know, made by another big studio in Ubisoft, and you wonder if the market's really there to support it. I don't think it is. Like, I think we're seeing repeat evidence over and over and over. If you make a online shooter game not named Pavlov and Onward, you know, that you're probably not going to have success. Contractors is the only one that's really had success that isn't named Onward or Pavlov. So, you know, well, Firewall 0 Hour had success, but that was more because the PlayStation was lacking. You know, they didn't have Onward and Pavlov and all that. But, you know, so if I were Respawn, I would be looking at that and saying, holy cow, like, the online community may not be there. This game may not thrive if it's online focused. So let's do a game that has a good campaign, a good narrative on with it, and then we can also make it online. So hopefully that's what they do, because whatever they're making, if it is truly AAA, and we know that they're an excellent developer, they know how to create a formula that people love. So I'm hoping that comes through here, and that it isn't almost as good as Robo Recall is. Right. This is something at Epic that was assigned to the B team, right? Like we didn't get the best of Epic with Robo Recall. And I hope the same thing isn't happening here with Respawn, that it's sort of like the interns and the new hires and the senior person that's about to retire that's assigned to the project while Respawn is focused on the next Xbox One title or the PS5 title. Like, I hope that's not what's happening here. And I hate to put it in those terms, but that's the reality of it. And, so I'm very optimistic for this title. I think it has the potential to be very good because of the pedigree of the developer. But I'm also a little cautiously optimistic as well.
Yeah, you'd think a lot of the developers that are at these studios, a lot of them are older, middle-aged guys that have been around for a long time. They've seen all the video game wars over the last 30 years. You would think they would be kind of excited for VR because it's like this new thing that they can dip their feet into. And so you hope for that. And I'm hoping that I know it's going to be a multiplayer focused thing, but I hope they do have a little bit of a single player campaign added to it. Okay, I also wanted to quickly thank a few super chatters. Steve Drumheller of Conquer Reality, thank you for your super chat. Also, he does have a channel, Conquer Reality, where he's going to be doing some VR stuff. You guys might want to check that out in the future. And Tony M with a super chat as well. Thank you so much for your support. We absolutely appreciate it.
Steve Drumheller also actually left a comment with his super chat. He said the Quest battery is 3,600 milliamp hours. A typical phone is 3,500 milliamp hours, whereas the Samsung S10 Plus is 4,100 milliamp hours. So the Quest battery somewhere in the general capacity of a typical smartphone nowadays. So I think that means, going back to that point, it means that we could have a Cosmos connected to a phone that probably still won't last as long as Quest due to the other inefficiencies, but could get maybe 70% of a similar life in terms of charge time. So that's not too bad.
Okay, and some other game information that we found out very recently is Vanishing Realms. So Vanishing Realms, going back to this idea of, all these games that came out in 2016 that for VR in that first year, Arizona Sunshine, Raw Data, all these big games that we got. Vanishing Realms was a very big game that launched day and date, I believe, with the HTC Vive. We're plus 3 years later now. When are we going to start seeing some stuff? Now, I don't know that this is actually like Vanishing Realms 2, but it does appear to be some major expansion. It could be DLC for the existing game that you pay for. It could be some kind of free DLC. It could be a completely new game. It could be like a Vanishing Realms 2. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities here. One of the weird things about this, though, is when we got this information, it was basically the developer talking to his fans saying, thanks for being patient. We're going to finally have some information within a couple of weeks here. But one thing he mentioned was being under an NDA and somehow not being able to reveal everything because he was under some kind of NDA. That's interesting because Valve Index, Vanishing Realms. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. But anybody's thoughts? Steve, I don't know if you played Vanishing Realms way back in the day. I don't know if you were like a huge fan of it. Pretty good dungeon crawler. What's your hopes for a possible expansion?
That it's just more of the same. I don't believe that it's going to radically be this major game in VR, but it will be nice to go back to it. What they call it, episode 3 or chapters 3 and chapter 4. So hopefully it actually wraps up, because the last time I played Vanishing Realms, it just kind of ends abruptly. You're like, oh, well, I was just getting into it and it's over. I will say with that game, the one thing I still feel like in terms of sword and shield, it's still the best that I can recall off the top of my head in terms of melee combat in VR. I can't right now. Maybe there's something better and I just can't think of it. That's always a possibility. But in my mind, Vanishing Realms is number one in terms of actual melee sword and shield combat in VR. It was really done well. And it's interesting that it was a 2016 launch game. The developer it's a one-person show, and I believe that person, I don't want to assume that it's a dude, even though it likely is. But that person is used to work with Valve, work at Valve. So he's or she's got a relationship there. And then, the NDA just suggests that it's all index related. So, I look forward to it.
All right. Any Gary or Chris, anything to say about that? Or
No, other than that, Vanishing Realms was one of my standouts for such a long time in VR. It was one of the first titles that I played, and I can't wait for this. So yeah, chapters 3 and chapters 4 coming out. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just going back to the E3 stuff about budget cuts. So I'm far more excited about Vanishing Realms anyway, the expansion for that. But budget cuts was a big title for me, and I've really not gone back into it. I wanted to ask you guys, actually, while I've got you here, whether any of you have played through the full release of budget cuts, and like budget cuts 2 is come so quickly compared to how long the original game got to actually be released, and obviously in part that's to do with the fact that they've teamed up with Fast Travel Games, and that in itself sort of excites me a little bit as well, because I think what they did with Apex Construct was really good. So I'm looking forward to budget cuts too. Just talking about these older games, Vanishing Realms and budget cuts. But has anybody got any thoughts about like budget cuts 2 itself at all?
I'm excited. I'm hyped for it. I don't know. Like it looks like a really good game. And I think Fast Travel Games is fantastic, like you said, Gary. So I think I'm more excited just for that, combination there. And I guess going back to Vanishing Realms, I had never played it, so I hope I can actually get into it, when this new whatever happens, so I can jump into it for the first time and have some new cool stuff. Also, I'd say Blade and Sorcery is probably number one for melee combat. I tried it for a few minutes. It's pretty insane, and like a lot of people seem to be hyping that one up. So, maybe we should check that out sometime as a roundtable.
okay, let's see. What else can we get into here? Well, of course, we can talk about index pre-orders or the shipping soon tag. I don't really have this. Gary, do you want to go to this story here about the index pre-orders get shipping soon tag?
Yeah, I'm just hyped up, so I've put this in here. But yeah, it's just basically selfishness that I've included this, because the emails have gone out now. Well, actually, some emails have started to go out to say that they are actually shipping indexes to various places, but not everybody is getting them yet, and it depends on sort of the delivery estimates, how long it takes to get to the destination and stuff like that. But we've got like the shipping soon tag in your Steam account if you're in Wave 1. Yeah, I'm just so hyped up about the Valve Index, I suppose.
So
but
let me
also,
ask Gary, you say all that, so I assume your account, when you go to your Steam page and you look at the transaction, it says shipping soon. Now,
yes.
The other step is getting the email. Do you have your email?
No, not yet. Okay. No. Have you got your email?
I do not have my email either. I am
good.
My thing says shipping soon, but I don't have the email yet.
Okay, phew. Just very quickly to go along with that though, the things that came out last week. I mean, just on that point, Steve, I do predict maybe you'll get yours, because I think what they said a while ago is from some support, somebody contacted Steam on and then posted it on the subreddit, saying that they are trying to get everybody that's in Wave 1 will get the Valve Index in their hands by the 28th, which, hopefully that's going to be true, but we don't know that yet. The other thing that went along with this as well is that Valve have updated Steam, added like a little index icon and things like that for compatible games. And they're also updating their website as well, where they are posting sort of some of the intricacies in how they develop the headset. And the first one that they released on this was to do with field of view, and they do really go in depth on their field of view on that, which was, is a very interesting read to go into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that field of view breakdown? When you read that entire thing, the way it sounds to me is like, and they kind of explain this, that they're not necessarily like making this gigantic field of view. It's hard to explain, but basically like what they're kind of explaining with this is that the field of view isn't that much different than, say, like a Vive or a Rift, but the difference is that everyone that tries this headset is going to get that full field of view, where not everyone gets the full field of view with the Vive and the Rift. And so it kind of sounds like, I mean, I don't know. You want to explain that, Gary?
Well,
but that's kind of the way they broke it down.
It was basically more. I mean, Steve will probably have some more thoughts on this as well. But basically, what they were saying is that a lot of the field of view on the traditional Vive is wasted. They're trying to incorporate more of the display and that kind of stuff to take advantage of that. And in that post, they did say like the disadvantage of expanding the field of view is that you are getting lower pixel density because you're spreading those pixels out over a wider field of view. But in the Valve Index, they are combating that by just utilizing the field of view that is available in the standard Vive, for example, and just maximizing that and getting the most of the display into your eyes. You know, I don't know if anybody's got it. I read this a few days ago, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this in depth, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'll just add that I think it's interesting that a manufacturer of a headset is going to those details and posting them. Now they're not putting it out, you know, it's not like it's a pamphlet that's going to be on a shelf at Best Buy. So the types of consumers that are going to come across it are going to be your more tech savvy, that the type of people that would go to Valve's webpage or whatever store page and see it. But you can contrast that to Oculus, who says almost nothing about the inner workings and the theory and the decisions based around the designs, the design decisions that they make in their headsets. So I think it's great seeing Valve do that, because it's catering more towards the techie enthusiast, and they're feeding right into the type of stuff that we like. Like, I love reading breakdowns like that. Like I'm into science. I'm into being as informative from a technical perspective as I can be. And you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth, rather than from Oculus. You're hoping someone like Doc OK makes a web page and breaks it down for you, because Oculus is not doing that. So whether or not I love the Index, I don't know. I'll have to see later next week. But getting a snippet to what's going on in their minds and into their decisions is a good one. However, I will also say as informative as it was still cherry-picked information. They did not get into the subject of glare and things that they do to mitigate that, which is one of my biggest concerns on the headset. And now the deep dive was focused on FOV, but there was a lot to do with lenses and stuff. I don't know if they're going to have another deep dive that focuses on lenses and optical clarity, but if they do, it will be interesting to see how they addressed compromises with glare.
Some breaking news as well, just quickly before we go on, is so Atom in chat said he just got his, or he or she got their Index tracking number, and they're in California. And there's also a post on the Valve Index subreddit as well to say that they're now shipping to California as well. So hopefully we'll all get something soon.
I wonder where they're shipping out for you, Gary, because they're coming out of Illinois here in the States. I don't know if they've set up a warehouse over there in the UK, because if not, you would think, and if they're shipping, they're getting the notices by furthest away, you would think that you all the way over there in England would be further away than California.
I've heard that they've got like a European distribution center. I don't know if it's based in the UK or sort of mainland Europe, but we have sort of our own assignment over here from what I've read about it, but who knows, we'll see.
Yeah, the last thing I just wanted to say about the field of view thing, I just thought of something, is like I've said many times before, if you have the original HTC Vive, that if you completely remove the retail face gasket and you just put your face up in there like that, and you have it like where the screens are as far forward as possible, I've talked about how it's like amazing. It's like you got a brand new headset. And the way it sounded to me is that that's basically what they're delivering, but without you having to do all of that, and for all of the users. And then for people that, if you have your head shape or whatever is ideal for this situation, yeah, you might get an even bigger FOV where you're in the 130s or something like that. So that's kind of how we could break it down there. Okay, so Gary, we can go to you now, and let's talk about your Rift S adventure. It appears like you've had a little bit of some issues with your Rift S. Why don't you go ahead and break that down for us?
Yeah, so I don't need to stay on this for too long, but basically what I've done is I've sent the Rift S back to Amazon for a refund. This was sort of I did it on Thursday, and this was the last day I was able to do that and get the full refund from it. But I do have plans to pick another one up. But the reason I sent it back was because I know a few people have had this problem, but it's like the head strap. So on the Halo strap, you've got this dial on the back that you can tighten up, and it was fine. Well, sort of fine for a while, but then the more I've used it, it's just started loosening itself. It started to come unlocked and then loosen itself. But not only that, also like the part of the display itself where you can, like the PSVR, where you can sort of slide it in and out, that has also started to loosen itself. And I'm not having. I even trialed it really not having it very tight at all, and I was still getting some times when I was using VR that it was just loosening itself to the point where I couldn't wear it anymore. And again, this problem was just getting worse and worse. So yeah, it was really just to mention that I'm having a few problems with the Rift S, my particular one, and I had to send it back, unfortunately. But I will be picking another one up at some point, unless, as we were discussing before the show, if the Valve Index can approximate the Rift S and the touch controllers, that kind of stuff with Revive, then maybe I won't. But I've got the money there. It's ready to go. I probably will be picking up another Rift S at some point. The other thing I wanted to mention, I know this is a more widespread problem with the Rift S, is these flashes of static, like the white flashes that appear every now and again in the Rift S when you're using it, and you get like a static, like distorted static display for a fraction of a second, and then it will go. And it's not a huge problem. It doesn't really take anything away, but it's there, and it's a little bit concerning. And that problem is still happening with the Rift S. So it started happening on day one. It's still happening now. I'm surprised they've not addressed this, or at least mentioned some kind of roadmap to get this problem fixed, and it does seem to be related to some kind of USB bandwidth issues or something like that, from what people have said on the subreddits. But yeah, just a few problems with the Rift S. I still think, I still like the headset, but yeah, just a few problems to mention, really.
I wonder because like when I go to the Oculus subreddit, and you look at all the threads that are on there, it seems like 1/3 of all the threads are like this problem, all these little Rift S problems, like blackouts, weird audio problems, weird flashing things. And then I also hear people complaining about the controllers, like the controller rings getting cracked and stuff. Like this one guy was like, I've like my original touch controllers, I've had them for 3 years. I've got a couple cracks on them, but I've had them for 3 years. I've had the Rift S for like 3 weeks, and I've already got some major cracks on the rings. And so it kind of seems like there might be some build issues with this. Chris, do you think there's a possibility that Oculus, like maybe there could be a slight refresh to the Rift S, where maybe somebody buying it in December might get a slightly different Rift S that maybe has a little bit better of a build quality or something? Maybe they'll just keep it quiet and won't really say anything about it. But could we see something like that maybe?
Yeah, maybe Oculus kind of did that in the past with the original. Like they would just, they made a little bit better face cushion like 6 months down the line or whatever. I think probably most of this is software and faulty units. But the frustrating thing is just that they can't seem to fix the software quick enough. Like it should have been able to resolve all these problems by now, you'd think. It kind of points to like a scary, worse problem than you'd think it would. Because I get, the static all the time, and it takes longer to get into VR sometimes. I put it on my head, it's like I can't find your Guardian, or it's like not tracking right now, so I have to like replug it into a different USB port. It's just been like a really big pain. Like the longer I had it, I was like, okay, it's early on, it's okay. They'll fix it in a week 1 patch or something, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And I know a lot of people are getting this thing where you just keep getting more and more controllers like duplicated on your account that you can't remove, and then that ends up screwing with tracking and stuff. And it seems like that's like kind of a big problem too. I haven't gotten that, thankfully, but I also don't have my Rift S right now. I'm letting a friend borrow it, so hopefully by the time I get Rift S back, it'll be okay. I don't think the touch controllers are as bad as people say. There are some probably build quality issues with some of them, but I think for the most part, like I've dropped them a few times on the Quest and things like that, and it's been okay. But the Rift S ones are like solid. Like I've banged those into the wall going like super high speed. I think if I did that with the Rift S ones, they probably would break, but it's okay. It's a downgrade in that way, so I'm sure that's why people are more upset about it.
I've
I
also
think
noticed,
it's
like, oh, go
interesting
ahead.
that, you know, we started off this show talking about Vive Cosmos, and we were talking about, oh, it looks like, you know, they're rushing to add cameras and add tracking. And if we're gonna be fair, like let's talk about Oculus for a moment. The big Oculus, the Facebook funded behemoth that can just throw money at research and development and engineers and a staff, and they release a product that has lots of problems. I personally haven't had any problems with mine, but I don't use it. I use my Pimax 90% of the time. But anyways, that being said, you regardless of what I personally experience, you can look at a place like a subreddit and you can kind of see the tone of a product. And I just find it very interesting that after so much flack that we being the four of us have given to HTC, that we've given to Pimax, that everyone gives to Pimax, but Oculus is supposed to be held to this higher standard. They're capable of so much more, and here they go out and they release a product that has bugs and issues, and it's kind of amateur hour, but they're not amateurs. They're supposed to be the big boys, the big dogs. Why I'm not to say that I think anybody's excusing it, but it almost like, should this be the case? Should we expect more out of them, or is it just VR is inherently finicky? Like why does this seem a little more acceptable? And I'm saying acceptable because I don't have a better word, but why are we holding Oculus to a different standard, it seems, than we are HTC and Pimax and HP and the other guys?
I don't know if we are we? See, I don't see see Pimax get a lot of they get a lot of criticism as well, but the thing is, like HTC, they're a hardware manufacturer. Oculus have been doing this for CV1, they've been doing it for the Go and the Quest, and now the Rift S, and they are. If you read that book, like the history of the future, you understand how they're sort of feeling their way through this, and the fact that they're backed by Facebook obviously gives you some kind of expectation about the quality of the product that they should be putting out there. But I still think that HTC should really be delivering high quality products, which for the most part I think they are. They're just priced a little bit too high. I don't know if I get that, Steve, honestly, whether we are holding them to a higher expectation. I don't know.
Well, it's the opposite. I don't think we're holding them to a higher expectation. Is that they just kind of get a little
free
bit
pass.
of and I don't want to say free pass, like we're just completely ignoring the stuff, but like we don't seem to be as bothered when we hear about somebody with a Rift S problem as when we hear about someone with an HP Reverb problem or a Pimax problem. Like we seem like we accent those that aren't Oculus a little heavier than the issues from Camp Oculus. It's just, maybe it's an irrational thing that I've personally observed, but it's just I found that interesting, and it brings up a good point with the index. Like, we love Valve, Lord Gaben, blah 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 blah. Look, this thing's gonna have problems. Like, people are gonna have late shipments, or their box is gonna show up empty, or they're gonna plug it in and it's gonna be a brick. Like Valve is gonna have all of these problems that these other players are having. So we're gonna see that meltdown on the subreddits as well.
Was there somebody? Do you remember when the Vive was released? Didn't somebody get a Vive box or an Oculus box and it just had bricks in it? Didn't that happen?
I think so. I think that happened. It was like a refurbished one or something. That's great.
Yeah, I think it's just the reality of that. Like, when they release these products, like they test them, but they can't test them the way the general public tests them. And so, and then you got so many different head shapes and head sizes and computer configurations and memory configurations, and just so many like USB port bandwidth issues, and it's a hard thing. Have we had a VR product that has been universally praised and loved by everybody. I mean, maybe the CV1 might have been the closest to that, but then you got other people that have like, I've never liked the CV1. It was never comfortable, or always had God rays. So I
If
just
I
think
had to say, I think the PlayStation VRs probably would be the answer there. Like, it's not perfect. People are like, oh, I wish the resolution was higher. And there were issues where the screens would used to like black out on you, and I think it had to do with the breakout box on the PlayStation. But other than that, like the PlayStation VRs, they don't seem to just flat out break that often. I would say reliability and bugs, the PlayStation VR is the least one, but it's not connected to a Windows PC either, so they got a leg up.
Do we think? Okay, I was gonna say, do we think that maybe the Rift S didn't come out earlier because they were having all these little software problems in their own testing, and they're like, man, we gotta, release this with the Quest at this point because it's having problems. That could be a realistic thing, because man, I mean, I can't imagine how buggy it would have been if it was released a month ago or something, like a month earlier. Like that would have been even worse probably. So
Okay, let's see. What else did we want to get into? Well, Chris, you do have your Frankenquest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I do have my Frankenquest. Yeah, so I haven't sold my Vive. I just have it sitting in a box basically, and I had the deluxe audio strap, so I took it, and I mean, this is like a well-known mod in the Quest community. A few people did videos about it, and MRTV did a video about it. But basically, you just shove Velcro on the sides of your strap and then hold it on, and I put some like Velcro ties around it so it's a little bit more secure. And yeah, it's not too bad, like $20 worth of material, and then it replaces the default Quest strap with one with like a ratchet, which is nice. And also, now I have the option to have really nice headphones. I think this is probably the best product HTC's ever made, to be honest with you. The deluxe audio strap, like, it's just a good thing. The headphones are good. It's comfortable. So I think this was like a no-brainer for me, because my Quest never fit me right, and I always thought it was just me, because I always remembered it fitting me well. Like when I tried it at PAX East, I was like, man, this thing fits perfect, and like it was super comfortable. But then I actually got it, and I'm like, it's very front heavy, and for me, like, it always sinks down on my face a little bit, so the lenses are always a little bit out of focus unless I keep pulling it back here. So that was really annoying. This mod has fixed that for me. I can finally, clamp it down, and it actually hugs the back of my head, and I can get it actually focused, which helps a lot for me. Also, I have the VR cover in here. I know there's like controversy on that lately. I'll be honest, it wasn't the most comfortable with the I don't know what you call this, like the pleather part that came with it, the face cushion. But I'm using the face cushion, like the 6mm one from the Vive, so I can get, like you said, Anthony, I can get my eyes really close to the lenses and get a higher field of view that way, and that actually makes it pretty comfortable for me. So, I'm happy with it now. Like, the comfort is very good, and I like the ability to have the enclosed audio, and then, or I can just unplug it if there's people around and they can still hear the Quest. So I think if you have one laying around and you're not using it, it's basically a no-brainer. I'm even having some people get this who just buying a deluxe audio strap at this point, because it's not too bad. It's like $100, $20 worth of materials. I think it's worth it. So for me, it's worth it anyway.
If you're going to use it a ton, it's definitely worth it. Let me put it back up, hold it back up in front of your camera. Now I want to ask, so I watched a video, and maybe you didn't do it the same way other people in the videos did, but to release the original Quest strap, it's like you have to insert a pin or something to get the mechanism to release. And anyone can search YouTube to find out how to do that. But I want to ask you is it wasn't clear to me watching videos when that strap, the original strap, comes out, does it look like it'll go back in and do whatever mechanical latching that it's doing, so that if you wanted to restore the Quest back to factory default, that it was easy and risk-free to do it?
I think it does. Like, it's a very easy little clip system that looks like it'll clip back in. I think the hardest thing is you'll have to fish out the Velcro part out of this hole again. So you'll need maybe some way to tie rope around it or something to be able to pull it out of there. That's probably the hardest part. I've heard people have done it before. I'm probably not going to go back personally, so it's not too big a deal. But I think it is pretty possible to do. You wouldn't want to though. If you did this and like you had your own deluxe audio strap for it that you didn't want to swap back and forth, I don't think you would do that. So
no, I'm just saying, like, if someone that went to sell it, maybe they're selling their Quest and upgrading to the bigger storage model, or maybe they had a warranty issue and they had to send it back to Oculus. So you ain't gonna send it in with a HTC deluxe audio strap attached.
I think it's doable. Like when I took it out, it looked very easy to put back as long as I could fish out this thing. I think that's the hard thing. I need some sort of really tiny pliers to fish out that part. But once I did that, it would work. And also the cool thing, so I kind of got like mixed reports on this. I thought at first that this would fit in the box just like as it is. I don't know why I thought that. That's kind of half true. Like this does fit where the old Quest strap was in the box, so you can fit it flat in the box like that. The only thing is the headphones stick out a lot. So if you took off the headphones, you could just fit it in the original box and everything. But it's nice that it, you know, kind of fits in the original thing, because then if you had like a bigger case around it, you could still place it in. So that was cool as well, just to know that it still semi fits. But yeah, this made a really big difference for me because it was super front heavy and I was getting really frustrated. I'm like, man, I didn't remember it being this uncomfortable. So now it's pretty one of the most comfortable headsets, I'd say, for me. So yeah, good mod if you have the money and you want either better audio or, you know, more comfort. And yeah, I do like the VR cover. I just don't like the facial cushion that comes with it. It's like a little bit too padded for me. So maybe if they had an option for a little bit less cushioning, then I think that could be better for me. So.
Chris, do you have the original Quest strap handy at all, or is it not near you at the moment?
I could run and get it. It would take me like 10 seconds.
Okay. No,
Time
some people are just asking about it. Just see like the connections from the original Quest strap if you've got it there, but no big deal anyway. We can probably cover it another time.
Yeah, it's weird, man, to see the Quest strap because it just has this really tiny piece of like, you know, metal. That's the spring, and you wouldn't think that. Like it looks so, I don't know, it looks like it's all rubber all the way through, but then it's just a super tiny little thing that actually holds it all together. So it's funny, but yeah, no, it could easily go back together if I had the right tools. If I had like a phone toolkit, you know, like to tear apart phones or something, maybe it would be a little easier. But yeah, I used like a kitchen knife to pry out the old strap, and it ended up being okay. So. Do at your own risk, though.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely need something to improve our comfort on the Oculus Quest. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if anybody like VR covers themselves or somebody tries to basically make something very specifically like that. But it might take a little while. Okay, so we can get into like a little bit of games and software here. And Gary, it looks like you've tried virtual desktop on the Quest and ALVR as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think you've tried virtual desktop as well, haven't you, Anthony?
Yeah.
At some point, yeah. So I tried that a few days ago, and I just want basically because we discussed it anyway, to say that did we discuss this on the show? This might have been the show that we missed. So virtual desktop, the developer got told by Oculus to remove that feature where you can stream Steam VR games over to the Oculus Quest. But what he allowed you to do is, as long as you own the title on the Oculus Quest, you can then sideload it on and still retain that ability. So I did that. And I tried it. You know, I've got to say, if this isn't the way that eventually VR headsets go, then I'll be very disappointed because it's not there yet for me. I will say, like the streaming part of it, and just a few caveats. I'm running this on a very bog standard router. It's a 5 gigahertz router, and I'm running both virtual desktop, the streaming capability of that, and ALVR on a 5 gigahertz router. And you get, you know, if you had a better router and that kind of stuff, you would get much better fidelity, first of all, but also latency. And these are the two things, really. Whenever you stream something from Steam VR over to the Oculus Quest, the two big things are latency and resolution. Virtual Desktop was the first one that I tried, and I thought it did a pretty good job. Okay, now it looked pretty good in the headset, but there was noticeable latency for me. And I know that other people that have tried it through Virtual Desktop, they didn't notice quite so much latency. So again, it's probably dependent on the router that you have, the quality of your connection and that kind of stuff. With the ALVR, you have a little bit, from what I've seen, you have a little bit more control over your experience. You can turn down the resolution and get better latency, and this kind of stuff. And ALVR overall was probably very slightly the better of the two, but that's a cost. The resolution was the cost. ALVR looked, when I tried Skyrim, so I was sort of testing this out with Skyrim, which was running on Steam VR on my PC, and then I was over on my Oculus Quest in the house, and the resolution, it didn't look good, but it gave you an approximation of that experience, and the latency was barely noticeable, even on like a bog standard router. It was there, and if you look for it, you could see it, but it's impressed me so much. The only problem was the resolution. It really didn't like look that great in the headset, unfortunately. But when I look at these two solutions that are, you know, it's, you've got in Virtual Desktop, you've got a free addition to a piece of software, and then you've got another separate piece of software which is free, ALVR, and you think they've got it so close. This is so close to being compelling and the future of VR. Why can't we get something like this, which is more dialed in? We've got possibly, you know, an official Oculus solution to this kind of stuff. I think this will be an incredible thing to have, like a standalone VR headset that can be tethered in this way and streaming stuff from your PC. It's what the dream would be, I think. And although it's not quite there from my experience on either of these two things, it gives you a glimpse. And it's, I mean, I've got to say, it impressed me more than I expected it to. It's not like I would ever take this to the point where I would prefer to play a wireless streaming version of Skyrim on the Quest or anything like that at the moment. But it's so close; you can see the end goal there, and it's yeah. I think both of these things are worth looking into if you've got an Oculus Quest and a suitably sort of spec'd PC, definitely.
I think you're going to have to repeat everything you just said because everyone was focused on your pronunciation of router as router.
Oh, okay, it's router. This is the Queen's English.
Yeah, I did try Virtual Desktop back before the changes happened, and I tried, I was playing Space Ops VR, and I was in my, in the other part of the house playing Space Ops VR on Steam. And I was like, this is so freaking incredible. I can't believe this is, like, you know, it really is that gee whiz factor. But then once you get over the gee whiz aspect of it, you're like, would I really ever actually do this though? And I did think, like, imagine if you went on a trip somewhere and you could be in a hotel. See, the problem is the internet is just not going to be fast enough, and it's just not going to be a good enough connection to ever really do that. But how amazing would that be is if you could go on trips places and you're somehow accessing your gaming PC at home and you're playing like Stormland on your Quest while you're on vacation. I mean, that would be incredible.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on like this being like that gee whiz factor, I will say, like, don't you see this as being a potential future though, where you do have a standalone VR headset which is capable of being used on its own, like the Quest, but also gives you, if it did give a flawless experience when streaming from your PC, I mean, I think to me that's like the dream, that's the end goal. I think, but.
I think it's definitely going to be where things are wanted to be. Like if you look at Google Stadia, and hopefully someone with the weight of Google behind them will kind of push. Now, even though they're not doing it for VR, maybe they'll further the field and the technology enough that all the VR developers and service providers basically copy and kind of push that tech out there. Also, I think when I think of PlayStation brand and I think of the Xbox brand, and to a degree, the Nintendo brand as well, we've always kind of heard and assumed that the selling of the consoles was subsidized or at least a loss leader, because then they had you locked into the ecosystem. streaming gets rid of that loss leader. Like PlayStation in the future, maybe PlayStation 6, PlayStation 7, whatever, but somewhere down the line, it's not going to be PS5. But if in the future this becomes viable, Sony quits taking a loss on selling you PlayStations. And they just immediately straight out of the gate start selling you games, or just keep selling you games and keep selling you a service, then that's going to be very appealing and interesting to them. So I think with Google and Stadia, and then following behind that, you're already getting glimpses of it from the Xbox keynote. They talked about potentially streaming Xbox games. I think the big players are going to start pushing this because they're tired of selling you hardware and not really making much money on it when they really just want to sell you content and services. So I think we're going to see a big push for this, and I hope that it gets good enough. My problem is I'm super, I guess, a super tech enthusiast. Like I feel like I'm always going to want a piece of hardware. I don't know that if it's wireless streaming is never going to be as good as having the box sitting next to you. Never. But if it's good enough for the masses, I could see it taking off, and then we're getting some weight behind it. Right now, it's beyond the days of what was the name of that company that started streaming, Ouya, and all those companies. These are all small startups. Now we got the big boys getting into it, and I think that hopefully makes it more feasible and makes the tech, functional.
Do you know? Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I was just gonna say, there's some crazy people on the Quest subreddit that are like renting high-end desktops for like $20 a month, like in some remote server, and then using VR or the virtual desktop to stream to their Quest. So, I mean, I hope that future really does happen. I actually was like almost gonna buy a Stadia Founders Edition just to try, have it and try it. Stadia seems pretty cool. I have fiber where I am, so I would want to see how good that is. Like if it's imperceivable for a desktop, it's probably getting close to VR. So I think that's an exciting future. Just wanted to point out some crazy people are kind of already trying to do that, but it's good to know it's not like I was reading these posts. I was like, man, is this like as good as PC? Do I need to sell all my VR stuff and just stream to my Quest? But I feel like the people who try this don't have PC VR headsets to compare with, so they probably like, oh, the resolution's fine. They probably don't realize like the compression as much or something.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can in ALVR. You have options. You can increase the resolution, but then obviously you're increasing the latency. And if you've got, I'm trying this on a really bad router. So I'm getting the best experience I can with that. But I think if you've got a better one, then you can sort of ramp up the resolution and get a better experience overall. The other thing is, and I know people are going to laugh at this, but 5G, eventually, I know it's not in the near future, but eventually, if they can do as a proof of concept, what they've shown with 5G streaming could be a potential solution to the future of VR in 5 years' time or something like that. Who knows? We'll see.
Hey, you know how we have like on your Oculus PC VR headset or your Vive or whatever, you can play something like they have like Doom, the old Dooms and like the old Quakes and stuff. Like some of those have been converted where like we could do it on Quest as well, or like Oculus Go, but I'm talking about the PC VR version. I wonder if you tried doing that and then streaming it over because it's already a lower resolution in the beginning. Would you get like almost perfect clarity?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or is it or like when you are playing like old school Doom, is it like being up converted to like the headset's resolution already before that? I don't know. Interesting. So is there any other games we want to discuss or anything else? I thought really quick, we don't have this written down here, but like any more thoughts about like Blood and Truth? Because I've been playing it a little bit more, and one thing I'll say about it is there's some interesting things about it from the standpoint that, did anybody else get this weird feeling where you're like sneaking around these areas in these facilities or wherever you are, right? You've got a submachine gun and there's like these enemies that are like 4 and 5 feet away from you, but they haven't noticed you yet. They're like walking their rounds, and then you're just like 5 feet away and you aim your submachine gun right at their head and And I don't know, it's kind of like feels weird to me, like I'm just murdering these guys ruthlessly, and then they're all over the place. You see their bodies laying around everywhere. Everybody has like a brand new sweatshirt on, brand new tennis shoes, brand new jeans, but it's pretty amazing how they did all these character models. Like that one guy that's like leaning over the desk and looking at you and making all the different expressions and everything. Pretty spectacular. And it also, but in other ways, it's like the game is very automatic and it's just kind of like automatically doing things for you. So I have all these mixed emotions about it, but production value is incredible.
I don't have any mixed emotions. I'm still loving it. I haven't completed it. I think I'm getting close, but I was playing it yesterday, and it's very similar to the conversation we had on our last episode, but I'm playing it seated. And I'm using, the tracking system that isn't the best on the PlayStation VR, but I'm finding myself feeling more immersed because of what the game is giving me is allowing me to give something back that most games don't do. So, I played a sequence, and I don't want to get into spoilers, but you're fleeing a building because something's happening, and you come across all the bad guys that are still in the building, and you don't have to kill them. And there's a bunch of explosions and slow-mo happening. And I killed them all. And like I felt like this true superhero or super action star badass guy. And I can't explain why this game is pulling these feelings out of me, given that I am sitting on my butt and I'm using PlayStation moves. Like, there are full room scale games that have not given me this feeling. And the only thing I can say is that it's the production values. It's what the game is thrusting me in. Like when you're flying in slow mo and you pull out your submachine gun and put somebody's brains all over the side of a wall, like, most VR games don't give you that because most of them don't have that fidelity and that investment. So I'm finding that is this is weirdly one of the more immersive games, and people on chat are probably gonna think I'm crazy for describing a seated PlayStation VR game this way, but it's what I'm experiencing. I mean, I'm just giving you the truth and the way I feel. And I think it's fantastic. It is my GOTY, and it may not be my GOTY come December or whatever. But it's my GOTY right now. Like, this game
really,
is just badass.
even with the fact that like it kind of plays itself to a degree. I mean, because I'm loving the experience of it, but it's hard for me to rank it with like it's hard for me to consider it a true video game because I don't feel like I have enough real interactivity. It's more like a thrill ride. An interactive thrill ride. That is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes, I do understand that. I really get that, because a lot of games, I think there's like a spectrum of games where you've got like completely that it's all about Twitch gaming and that kind of stuff, and then you've got a spectrum where they're trying to tell a story and you barely feel like you're playing a game. And this ranks, again, I'll say it ranks far more over to the side which they're telling a story and you have less agency overall in this game. But the overall experience, just take it for what it is. It's a movie and you are playing. I always suspected I was better than Jason Statham, and I think this has proved it, because I feel like I am Jason Statham in this game. It's so
in this
good.
Movie.
Yeah, in this movie, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it evokes those kinds of emotions where you see all of these scenes played out in these action movies and that kind of stuff, and you might wonder, what does it feel like to actually be in that first person shot when this action scene is taking place? And this gives you that experience, and that's the important thing. It's not, I can understand people having a criticism of it as not being necessarily like a Twitch game or anything like that, because it's not, but it's giving you an experience which is still valid and still worthy of being called a game, I think.
I think if you compare it to I'm going to compare it to the VR darling Superhot. Superhot is you're just in this white space and you're toying with this time mechanic. You have full agency in Superhot, I think, right? Like, would you say that, Anthony? You have full agency in Superhot? Well, I think Blood and Truth is a better game than Superhot. or it's a better title for me than Super Hot. And Gary, you're even rolling your eyes at that because I know Super Hot is one of your faves. And it's what it. So I've always made the argument too that I can't. The problem with first person VR in relation to creativity is the motions that you can do as a human being. And people have heard me say this, and I'm going to repeat myself, but I can't dunk a basketball. In my room here with a VR headset on, I can't jump 10 feet and dunk a basketball. In my room with my headset on, even the Oculus Quest and being fully mobile, I can't do a triple backflip like Kratos while I'm slicing people up in a God of War style game. So what Blood and Truth is doing by taking that locomotive agency away from you, it is putting you in physical positions and maneuvers that you can't pull off yourself. And it's orienting you the certain way while you're falling out of a building window, and the game orients for you, but it puts you in slow-mo in a position where you can pick off some people shooting your guns. That's doing things that we can't do with full agency VR. We'll never be able to do that the right way. So
But the trade-off
is a trade-off.
Well, when you're falling out that window, like you're talking about falling out a window, and I remember that I'm falling out a window, and then arbitrarily I find out after dying about 5 times that there's this one little ledge that happens to turn white at a very key moment, and that's where you grab. That's where you pull yourself up. And I kind of I want a VR game where and obviously this is the trade-off. It's what you speak to. You can't have this incredible action experience if you're going to be looking all over the place. But I'd love a game where it lays out all the rules of the world, and then now you have the rules of the world. And so when you're falling out that window, you know what you can do, not you find out, oh, after I died 5 times. But that's the trade-off. But, one thing I'll say about this Blood and Truth thing that is more interesting to me than anything else is you talked about it, Steve, is the production value. These are the big boys. This is London Studio. These guys know what the F they're doing. One of the best developers on planet Earth. They've been given the time. They've been given the resources. And this is what you can get out of it. And they're doing it on a freaking PlayStation 4 with a crappy camera, crappy move controllers. And despite all of that, they've made all of this happen. Now, here's my question. Oculus had $250 million that they were doling out, 10 million to Epic Games, millions to NXile Entertainment, Tripwire Interactive, et cetera, and a cashmere sweater. But why do they not have anything that is equivalent to Blood and Truth when they've got such better processing capabilities, better tracking? If I'm Oculus, if I'm Jason Rubin and I play Blood and Truth, I'm like, we got screwed. What did we get for all of our millions? Is it the fact that NXile Entertainment and Tripwire Interactive and Insomniac and all these companies, are they not up to the level of London Studio? Or is it like what Steve was kind of thinking, we're getting the B team, the C team, the D team from those studios?
I don't know. I think Archangel is another good example. It was an on-the-rails game. I enjoyed Archangel a lot. And a lot of people were against it. I've seen Chris Richardson in chat type Blood and Truth equals rail shooter over and over and over. Like the words rail shooter are an automatic negative connotation. Like it's just inherently bad because it's a rail shooter. And I'll just say that Blood and Truth can do things that these room scale games can't. Room scale is great in its freedom, but it's also inherently a constraint. It's both. Unless we have a physical play space where we can jump through windows and slide under tables while we're shooting with our motion controllers, unless we can physically perform those maneuvers, then it is also a design constraint. And I imagine developers are actually struggling with what they can come up with from a context and from a creative standpoint with someone standing in a room waving their arms about. That is, we've always looked at it as this is so free. We're free. We can move around in 3D space, but it's also a constraint. It is a design constraint that these developers are struggling with. And I think Blood and Truth is a highlight of showing you the opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm not saying I want every game to be like Blood and Truth and be on rails, but I'm just saying sometimes that can do different things. It's kind of like looking at third-person games in VR. Some people are so inherently against third-person games. Not doing it doesn't make sense. It's VR. Well, but we know third-person games can be enjoyable. Well, I think on rails, a game like Blood and Truth can do some clever crap that we can't get out of a room scale game, and I think it's easier to be more creative. And I think long term, we should hope that developers figure out good creative solutions. Lone Echo is a great creative solution that doesn't have the I'm standing in the middle of my room waggling my arms about motion controller feeling that a lot of room scale games have. So. Just a sort of a mini rant and everything, but I love Blood and Truth.
Like I just don't think that every game has to do everything, and that's the difference. It's like I have an argument against Beat Saber, as everybody knows, and that's not doing the things that I want from VR. And Blood and Truth isn't doing everything I want from VR either. But it's doing something that is particularly impressive to me, and that's the thing. Not every game needs to be give you 100% agency or anything like that. And I'll look for that kind of stuff elsewhere if need be. But Blood and Truth as a self-contained experience is just fantastic. Chris, we're apparently neglecting you. Have you got any thoughts on this as well?
No, I really don't, because I haven't played it. But man, this sounds amazing. I gotta get my PSVR reset up. Like, it's a pain in the ass to set. Once it's set up, it'll be good. Like I'm moving in like a week and a half, so I think that'll be one of the first things I do is jump into Blood and Truth and give that game a go, because it sounds super awesome. I love the idea of really good storytelling in VR. So all this discussion is great, but I'm sitting here listening to all of it. So
yeah, the argument that Steve made is a good one, because like you think about a game like John Madden Football, for example. You see a trailer for John Madden Football, they make it look so exciting. When you get the actual game, it's just this one perspective, because the problem is in a trailer, they can show, a close up of the wide receiver. He's just about to catch the ball. And then they show all these different angles, but it's impossible to play a game from a million different camera angles being cut. Like, it's impossible. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Steve. We need brain computer interface. Fighting vipers or whatever it is, we got to go right into our freaking brains.
I watched that a couple of days ago.
Oh, really?
I don't think we have time to break down striking vipers or whatever it was called, but that was an interesting episode. We're talking about Black Mirror for anyone who doesn't get the reference.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess that's pretty much about it. Was there any other little last minute tidbits anybody had before we bounce out of here?
No,
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll just mention really quick, sideline note, I'm doing some Twitch stuff. So if you go over to Twitch, VR365, I'm actually going to do a stream in about a half an hour or so. So I'm bouncing between Twitch and YouTube. So just wanted to mention that really quick. But basically, we will, I think we're planning on being back next week. So we'll see you guys on about a week from today on Sunday. We should have Vive Cosmos information, maybe Valve Index impressions. Not me, unfortunately, but the other guys of the show.
Don't say maybe. Don't put that bad juju out there. We will have Valve Index impressions, because Valve is going to deliver the headset to me and Gary on time.
Thanks.
All righty. But that will basically do it for the show, and we'll see you guys next week. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Take it easy.
Adios. Bye.